Good evening. Good evening. Well, I've got a little history lesson, a little prophecy lesson for you tonight. I'm so glad you're here. Feeling a lot better this Tuesday than last Tuesday, but still very, very weak. Continue your supplication for me while I have my hair done. There, much better, much better. You're probably looking at some of the live views, maybe on YouTube, of Gaza City tonight, the last few days. Israel is just bombing the tar out of them right now. A little bit of history behind that is that in 2005, Ariel Sharon recognized that something had to be done with Hamas. There are the government of the Palestinians there is the, hold on a second. Let me just check my note and make sure I'm doing this right. There are two Palestinian territories. One's on the West Bank. The other one is the Gaza Strip, which is on the Mediterranean. In 2005, they let loose a hail of weaponry upon Israel. As you may remember, rockets, killings, about what's happening today, but not so bad as today. Two territories. One was made up of the government of Hamas, which in biblical Hebrew means violence, believe it or not. And the other one was the Palestinian Authority. So Sharon and his cabinet decided that we're not going to put up with Hamas anymore. What can we do with them? Well, in a very biblical move, as usual when it comes to Israel, I don't think they know they're doing it, but they seem to be moving right along with the prophetic events of the scripture. They decided to put the Hamas people in the Gaza Strip on the sea, put the violent people there on the sea. Unfortunately, the rich folk, Jews, Christians, no religion, were living on Gaza at that time because it was the vacation paradise of all Israel. When people wanted to get in a high rise by the sea, they go to Gaza and they'd rent a place. Rich people, only those could live out there. Rich people like you and I. Somebody's in the waiting room. Okay. And so Israel had to relegate these people out. They didn't make them go. The rich weren't made to leave their homes, but as they gave forth their plan for Gaza and the Gaza Strip, the people recognized there that they need to go because they were going to shut that in with a wall. Of course, you know that in 2006, they did just that. They put Hamas terrorists in Gaza, and anybody that wanted to go under their leadership went to Gaza, and the rich Jews came out and they built a wall. 2006. Well, something prophetic happened in 2005 that leads up to today. Interesting to note that the territories of Gaza and the West Bank are separated from each other. If you didn't look at the map there, let's look at it just for a minute. Again. Over here's Hamas. You can see there's the Gaza Strip. You might see if they made that into like a prison colony, what they could do with those people is push them out. They got nowhere to go. Egypt doesn't want them. And the West Bank, these are the people that are less militant. Both of these territories are still seen as cut off from Israel proper, including this one, Golan Heights here, but they're not anymore. Since Jerusalem was declared the capital of Israel, they have very aggressively taken over these areas that 1948 Accords did not allow them. And they are now part of Israel. So Gaza is still a part of Israel. West Bank is still a part of Israel. And this is Israeli territory. Of course, the Palestinians didn't like that very much, but they didn't do much about it either. I think they were thinking we could concentrate our power over here in the Gaza Strip, and we could live like the rich and famous. So Gaza Strip, since that time, has they're the fourth most populated area in the world. If my statistics are right, I have been seeing on YouTube announcements that they were the most populated area in the world, but that's not true, not the case. Fourth, or maybe below that, but it is quite densely populated. And the Jews have gone out of there. Both of these areas are separated. So, like I mentioned, we have over here in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, and over here, Hamas. So they broke it into two since 2006. They're both united in their figureheads, but not in their governments anymore. So that was a good thing for Israel because they kind of broke them all up. Let's go back then. And at that time, I was really interested in this, not so much now, because I think I was pretty aware of what had to happen. This had to happen. Well, how far it goes is another question. But I began to study in this a little bit. And in 2005, I came upon a very obscure passage in a book you maybe never heard of, Zephaniah or Zephaniah. What would be the English name there? Stephen, right? Zephaniah. Okay, so there's a Stephen in the Old Testament too. He's a prophet. What I'm going to do is show you what came out of me. At this time, in 2005, I was under this extremely strong anointing to write music with biblical lyrics. And this is the time that I have mentioned before that I wrote and arranged 200 biblical, should I call them sacred name songs, prophetic songs, psalm songs, straight out of the scripture. And it wasn't me trying to, these just came. And I always had my music paper there or something to write on because I'd be on the bus going to work in Tallahassee, and here out they'd come. I had to write them down. And at home in the middle of the night, same thing. And then once I got the verses done in the way the Bible wanted them to be done, in verse with rhyme and rhythm, which they're not translated that way. Most of this prophetic stuff is in rhyme and in rhythm. Then I spent another year just writing the musical arrangements, and some of them were pretty strange, but some of them are pretty nice. I want to show you a prophetic one tonight. It covers at least part of Zephaniah chapter 2. So I just need to set up for a minute. I didn't have to think about writing this verse. It just came out. It was very supernatural. And the music for this, well, it's not my usual stuff, but I'm going to just let you to look at these words and play the music. I think, though, I have, look at how many verses. I go clear through Isaiah 10 through 19, because I begin to notice something very unusual, that these passages, look at them all. These passages came to a head. They were actually writing our history of, say, the last 10 years or so, going from ancient times to, I'd say, probably 96 or so, 1996. So to give you the idea of kind of a musical background of these verses, I think that what I have here is 4 verses, maybe. Let me play that music and you can read the words as they go along. I hope you can see them. And I hope you can hear.
The mighty trees of sword and mouth, the lofty trees of highest perch, broken down to earth. That is why we have the burden for Lebanon, Lebanon, Lebanon. Oh, so strong and swell for Tyre and Snyder in Lebanon, Lebanon, Lebanon. As the mighty one shall fell you. Behold the sovereign Yahweh Sabaoth, the neighborhood has found the sun and the rough, Zion never fear the rod of Syria or of the God, for I am stirring up a scourging and a purging. That is why we have the burden for Lebanon, Lebanon, Lebanon. Oh, strong and swell for Tyre and Zion in Lebanon, 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 as the mighty one shall fell you. Behold the sovereign Yahweh Sabaoth is sharing yet another mighty quote, appearing from the royal roots. The stem of Jesse sprouts a shoot to bear the spirit and the fruit, one of high repute, and that is why we have the burden for Lebanon, Lebanon, Lebanon. shall farewell you.
Strange. Then my heart went to Isaiah 10. What I remember was that this burden for Lebanon comes from Zephaniah. I think I said number 2. See if I can see it here. Yeah, I can't right now. It seems to be pointing to starting point of Isaiah 10, 33 through 34. And as you saw, maybe you caught that this goes chronologically through Isaiah. And I've already told you this, but it goes through 19, I think, certainly 18. Here's Zephaniah 2. It's a call to repentance. Which I don't need to read this. It may be that you will be hidden in the day of Yahweh's anger. Next part is the judgment on nations, and right up at the top is Gaza shall be forsaken. And this came to my mind at the time when Israel was deporting out of Gaza, everybody that was in there that would go. And to continue on with this, here's Ascalon, desolate. Ashdod, driven out. Ekron, uprooted. Then it says, woe to the inhabitants of the sea coast. This is Gaza again, the nation of the Kerethites. That word is the same word as cherubim. Now I'm thinking that those are angels with swords. These would be the sordid people, which is to say the violent ones. The word of Yahweh is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines. There were 5 settlements, major settlements of Philistine, or Philistine, if you will. And 4 of them are mentioned here in these verses. 1 is not. Now, your quiz for today is which of the 5 is not? You might know that off the top of your head, but the scripture is very certain what that 5th one is. It's only got 2 letters in it, yet it's hard to pronounce. But let's look briefly now at Isaiah, because this is important. And we're up to 2007 now. I was looking at this for 2 straight years. Here's the destruction of Lebanon, Isaiah 10, 33 to 34, and that's where this whole thing starts. Speaking of the lofty being brought down in the land of Lebanon. Now look, this just doesn't speak of Lebanon, the country, which is north of Israel, has borders with Syria and Israel. But Lebanon is also a type of the temple in Jerusalem because it was made of Lebanon cedars. You remember the king of Tyre came down helping to put together that temple for Solomon with all kinds of wood and metal. So my verse here that relays this in verses, now the lofty are brought down in the land of Lebanon. By assassins' bullets, bombs, tanks and planes will fill its tombs. This the mighty one expects. What are we expecting next? Going forth to Isaiah 11, 1 through 3, where it talks about the carnage. From the carnage, Lebanon, cedars springs forth the Messiah. At first, but a small secret shoot. From the carnage of the trees sprouts the greatest of decrees. Next comes forth a fervent shoot from King David's royal root. Mighty rulers he'll indict. 7 spirits prove him right. Next section is 11, 4 through 5. Equitable justice will begin through his mouth. That is, his mouthpieces, the latter-day prophets and prophets of today. Every poor will win his case. Every rich he will abase. Equity will serve the meek. Orphan, widow, maimed, and weak. Wicked ones with iron maul, and with his mouth shall dispatch them all. Lots and lots of money at that time came in from all over the world, including United States. Money not only from the government, but donations to Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. And some of those donations were by Jews, because they felt sorry for these people or because they wanted to divest themselves of their Judaism. A lot of your secular Jews today don't want to be known as Jews. Sometimes their names give them away. But I could say by and large, we find that Jewish people, at least culturally, or in the Khazaria bloodline, Jews originally from Eastern Europe, they want nothing to do with that identity. And that's why today, when they vote overwhelmingly with the party that supports the Palestinian cause. Now, we're all for supporting the Palestinian cause, for the poor to win his case and equitable justice to begin, and they had a chance for that. But you know that all the money that came in to the Palestinian Authority was siphoned off by Hamas. And what's the other one? There's another organization there, I can't think of it right now, siphoned off for violence. That money didn't go to the Palestinians to help them or to build up their culture. These people living in the 7th century AD with their continuing Muslim ways and the Sharia law, they certainly aren't living with the Torah of Yahweh there by any means. The money siphoned off. Then we go to Isaiah 11, 6 through 9. The extended outcome of equitable justice and money is to be peace and the universal knowledge of the sacred name. Who would be the author of help to these people of Edom through the Jews and Gentiles of this land? Well, it would be Yahweh, the sacred one. When he's finished with the dam, wolves will tarry with the lamb. Understand that that passage about wolves with the lamb, that is about nations, not wolves and lambs. Anytime you see animals in prophetic passages, and there are lots and lots of them, you've got to think nations, or you've got to think people groups. Wolves will tarry with the lamb. Men of war, when war shall cease, all become new men of peace. The false name God will Yahweh ban, as he says in his prophecies, his name known by every man. Again, that's part of the prophecy here in Isaiah. Of course, I don't want to go through all this, but I wanted to give you a little bit of incentive to go and look yourself at these passages, because they get better and better. Isaiah 11:11, for instance. New and unexpected groups will migrate en masse to the safe lands of Greater Israel, including the United States. Greater Israel, I know there's a big triangle on the map. Greater Israel includes Lebanon, includes part of Arabia, includes Iran, part of Iraq. It's a big old triangle from the Nile River in Egypt to the Euphrates River to the east. And the second Exodus really began. The second Exodus will date, the first from 1948. From Africa and from the west, 10,000 marched to Abram's breast, then straggling in from north and east. Here come the greatest to the least. First, they come in our time, come in from Africa. They come in certainly from Eastern Europe. The Holocaust chases them down there. Those that were expected to live for Yahweh's cause and who certainly showed during the Holocaust that they were the people of Yahweh, continuing their worship there in the camps, while those that with real Hebrew blood, they moved to Africa. They're still in Libya, places along the Mediterranean coast in Africa. But you can look that up in your tribes book. From Africa and from the west, 10,000 marched to Abram's breast, then straggling in from north and east. Here come the greatest to the least. Mostly the least, because these so-called Palestinian people, there's no such culture as Palestinian, not until now. Not until now. The people there are actually Syrians, because Syria, after Roman times, Syria came in and took over that area. In fact, even in the time of Joshua, Syria was where Israel was governed from. And after Muhammad turned violent, turned to Hamas, and started moving to the west, bringing people with him, doing the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar did when he drained out the people of Israel and put people from his area, Persians and Syrians, into Israel. That was the time of Jeremiah. Remember, Jeremiah and several of the other prophets were in exile out by the Kebar River in what we call today Iraq. The Muslims, especially Muhammad, decided that that's a good thing to do. We're going to move the west to the east, and we're going to move the east from the east to the west. So what we have there is a population, especially up until 1948, of Syrians. Oh, I want to go into a lot here, but I'm not going to. Isaiah 11, 12, and 13. The tribal associations other than Yehuda will be given the opportunity to immigrate. And of course, that's happening. We remember something that happened in 2008 that's just absolutely amazing. But first, lost tribal folk of Ephraim, now longing for Jerusalem, and Jewish folks from foreign shores will make Aliyah by the scores. The first return fulfilled the word, and so the second and the third returns. Now, the second return is called, we all talk about it, the second, somebody help me there. And the third goes beyond that. We're probably in the time of the second Aliyah right now. A lot of Americans want to go there, and they are not permitted there to stay if they're known to be Christians or Messianic Jews. They're not wanted there. But all the heathens that want to come in, they can do so, as long as they are not terrorists. Isaiah 11, 14 through 16, there are bombing attacks on Gaza as the Jordanians and Syrians leave the Philistines to their own fate. Seems to be happening now. Jordanians and Syrians, the ones that made war on Israel from 1948 up until 1973, I believe, they're not helping Gaza now at all. There's a completely different power and different religion helping the people with these bombs and the makings and accoutrements of war and paying for them and supplying them. Because the Iranian people are not Arabs. All these other ones in the Middle East are Arabs, including in Israel. The Syrians are Arabs. They speak Arabic, but not Iran. Iran are culturally Persians. They do not speak Arabic. They speak Farsi. From that word, we get Parthia, Persia, and Pharisee. All come from there because they're all culturally, including the Pharisees, from Parthia, Persia, same thing. Great plains from greater Israel, from east and west descend and shall, the modern pseudo-Philistine. Those are people in the Gaza and Lebanon. Lebanon, you're going to see them coming in pretty fast. What is the name of that group in Lebanon? It's on the tip of my tongue, but see, I'm not remembering so much anymore. Things are getting away from me. The Moabites, all between. Moabite, that's south end of Syria into Arabia. Ammonites, Jordanians, capitulate. They quit with the Palestinians for highways running through that state. Let's see. The modern pseudo-Philistine and Moabite and all between, the Ammonites, Jordanians capitulate for highways running through that state. They want to become more modern. Jordan was never a terrorist state. I mean, they said they were, but the point is they didn't have enough money and they had no oil to build up their forces. So their armies are kind of questionable. I was at the Dead Sea years ago. There weren't many people there at this time, but there were a few families. Families sitting on a blanket on the shore of the Dead Sea, and some tourists. And I saw the family with, what do they call it now? machine gun, AR-15. I don't know much about guns except how to shoot them. So he's there with his family, and taking a prominent place besides his wife and children on that blanket was a big machine gun. And I asked him, this fellow, a native there in Israel, guy about my age, he spoke English. I asked him, why do you have to carry that gun down here at the Dead Sea? He just pointed across the other side of the Dead Sea. And what he said was, if your sworn enemy, sworn to kill you, lived right over there, you'd be carrying a gun down here too. And as it turns out, if you look around, they all carry guns there. They have to. They have to. Yet in this country, that's one of the things they're trying to take away, just like Hitler did, just like so many liberal places did, like England, Germany, Australia. You can't have a gun there. But in our country, the only ones that really have guns, besides hunters and people wanting to protect themselves in case somebody breaks into their house and kills everybody, are criminals. Criminals. You can't take the criminal out of the person by taking guns away from people who legally own them. And I know you've heard that many times, but it's true. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if our government for the last 2 years and before that, the 8-year stint of somebody else, weren't made up of erudite liberals, college professors, and people with very little life experience, too young, it's a wonder that we can even have a gun today. It's a wonder. We had 14 years of constant lobbying against hunters having guns. And even now, that's still coming up. In California, they want to take hunting out of the school curriculum. I never knew it was in school curriculum. The next thing they'll want to take is ROTC, ROTC. I live just a block away from the high school here. I saw these ROTC students, that's what they call ROTC, drilling. They didn't have machine guns. They had guns that were obviously made out of wood, fake guns, just drill guns. I saw them marching down the road while I was waiting for all the cars to depart there at the high school a couple of days ago. I was impressed. They had uniforms on, they had caps on, they were in order, they were learning discipline, while so many others of those high school students were walking out in the middle of the road, jaywalking right in front of the car. I did that once. Yes, I did. I got hit. It wasn't my greatest moment. Next, Isaiah 11:14-16. While to the east, sectarian Muslims turn against each other with militias and death squads. Again, I wrote this down in 2005, 2006. Yet Edomites, that is Arabs, are all incensed, so Yahweh turns them all against themselves to massacre and maim by suicide and bloody shame. The nations, the UN, want them to behave, but Yah declares them to be grave. A double meaning there in that last word. This was when the time that nearly 20 years ago, that the Sunnis and the Shiites were fighting it out. and I guess they still are in places like Iraq, the Shiites is a different type of Islam than the Sunnis. See, the Shiites believe that the Mahdi, the Messiah, was, what was he, nephew of Muhammad. And to keep the caliphate and the imams in the bloodline of Muhammad. The Sunnis have a different Messiah, not connected to Muhammad by blood anyway. And so what are they going to do? They got a billion people. Are they going to break down into denominations? Well, yeah, there are some denominations in Islam, but these guys simply want to kill each other. I don't understand that. Couldn't they be so much more powerful? And now, who's financing this uprising in Israel? The Shiites. Who are the people in Israel? At least the Islamic people? They're all Sunnis. 15 years ago, these two sects were killing each other. Can you believe it? Now, the biggest Shiite power in the world is financing this uprising, while really everybody else has been making peace with Israel, including Saudi Arabia. Go on for one more, I guess. I want to get down to the Abraham path. Isaiah 12 talks about the knowledge and power of the sacred name. And when we say the sacred name, what we're talking about is his power in the world and his decision what to do, if to do anything. They say, if there was a God, why would God let all these people be killed? Or why would there be evil on earth? Well, it's for the very reason that there is a Yahweh on the earth that there is, because he leaves us, by and large, to do our own bidding. That's free will. Of course, you won't get a Presbyterian to go along with that, but I believe in free will, don't you? Let them bear the burden of what they have done wrong. And that's what's happening, and it has always happened, until he decides, or she decides, really, we should call Yahweh it, because it's not a man or a woman, either one. It decides if it's going to place his little finger on the scale, so to speak. So the knowledge and power of the sacred name Yahweh, and that's what it's called here in Isaiah 12:1, Yahweh, goes out through the composition of worship music employing his name. And I'm kind of speaking for myself now, but since that time, there have been a plethora. There's been an upswelling of music, at least, used in the worship of, shall we say, Nazarene Israel, including Yahad. We would be found in that. We're Nazarene Israel, using that name. I remember trying to find Yahweh music on YouTube 10 years ago. You couldn't find that. Now you can find it all over the place, and it's available to use. Everybody should know that name now. And you might ask, are you sure that's the right name? Isn't it Yehovah? No way. Yahuwah? No way. No way. I've tracked this down as far back as you can get. And as far as anyone can tell, it's Yahweh. And if you look at any scholarly work, I'm not talking about guys that say they're smart like me on YouTube. They don't know anything about etymology, if that's what the study of words are. Take a look at a real scholar, Eliah. Go look at one of his websites about the sacred name. He'll show you right down to the very first. And in fact, though Yahweh's name has changed a little bit due to the evolution of language, at the time of the first century, he was known, if you dared speak his name, as Yahweh, or the U fell out in the first century, Yahweh. So, you know, he's being called Yahuwah today because there's such a word as Yehuda. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We ought to have a little thing on that. Yahweh is my strength and song. We'll sing, and some will sing along. Singing will not be the same, for some will sing his sacred name, and some will write the songs they sing, and thus we fulfill this foresaid thing. This is why I started this, and this anointing came on because there wasn't any then. None to speak of. I thought, well, this will catch on real fast. It never did. I never promoted it because I'm shy. That's all I can say. I'm shy. So though all that music stays in the back. Isaiah 13, 1 through 5. Scripture says Yahweh employs his forces from afar to destroy the palaces of dictators and giants. These righteous forces will then enter through the palace gates. Now we can see that palace as a city gates or through the wall. Next, when these signs have begun, the burden comes to Babylon. The burden came to Babylon, 2003. The palaces of potentates will all be entered through their gates by mighty, angry men of war that Yahweh musters from afar. I don't care what some people say about that war. I can say myself, I was all for it. Still am. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. No people should live under such a despot as Saddam. No one should live under that. And his two children, which are mentioned here in this prophecy in just a minute. Isaiah 13, 6 through 8, the fate of Babylon and the day of Yahweh. Amid terror and confusion, Iraq is destroyed. They didn't need to be destroyed. You remember Baghdad Bob? That guy, I mean, if one of the three stooges passed away, he would be a great replacement, Baghdad Bob. For from the sea and from its isles, with shock and awe, his host defiles this wretched, tiresome pagan land. The day of Yahweh is at hand. These Edomites fight fire with fire till Babylon is one charred pyre. Previously to that, you remember that Iran and Iraq were in full-out war for 10 years. And then they made peace just on the urge of our invasion, ours and Britain's and some of the others' invasion, so they could take their armored mechanisms over to Iraq to be saved so they wouldn't get blown up. You remember that? So, of course, the Iraqis paid a fortune in oil to Iran for that privilege. We can't go through everything. So I've got a few more minutes. I'm going to go to the next one that I think, oh yeah, lots of stuff here about Iran. I want to show you just a couple more if I can find them. Since we were talking about Saddam a little bit. Oh boy, there's too much here. This refers in Isaiah 14, I'm going over here, first 11 chapters or 12, refers to the dictator, Saddam Hussein, king of Babel, who was lifted to godhood in his land. See all the pictures of him? He took after Hitler. He put large posters of his own portrait every place. They thought he was a god. The Kurdish people didn't think he was a god. He massacred them all the time. And he massacred the Iranian Shia in there too. But I think the Sunnis were just too scared of him. Finally found concealed in a shallow pit by American troops. Then Israelites from every throng will with one voice take up the song, "The great oppressor, where art thou? What has become of you just now? Hid in a pit, his bed with worms, no longer must we come to terms." When they got him out of the pit, I just wondered at that time, I actually felt sorry for him. Why? What must he be feeling now on top of the world? 1 minute, the next minute, hiding down in a slash pit. This next one is important. Take a look at Isaiah 14, 12 through 23. A continuation of the last with a mention of the death of Saddam's sons. Yes, you who made your golden homes in Babylon's great pleasure domes. Oh, how you've fallen, and your sons, both listed with the bloodied ones. The rat was trapped there in a pit with bones, stale water, rats, and spit. You look at this passage in Isaiah 14, and what you see is the mention of two sons. It all follows. It's amazing. Isaiah 14:24 has to do with assassination. These pro-Israel parliamentarians in Lebanon, who had a government much like Great Britain, was to be turned by assassination, exposing these assassins who, of Lebanon's elite, killed another two, and then a third, and Christians all. Did you know that Lebanon was a Christian country up until about this time? And then a third, and Christians all, set Syria for quite a fall. For even in this very week, 3 martyrs will arise and speak. The Golan Heights up by Syria turns out to be a bargaining chip for the Syrian cooperation in a cleanup of Lebanon. We sent a lot of goods and stuff in there. And you remember, we were pretty much out of there when these people, Hamas and I can't think of, the people in Lebanon, that's a different terror group. I just can't think of it now. But Hezbollah. Thank you. I knew somebody had heard that. What was I going to say? Cleaning up Lebanon, and Ronald Reagan was president, and they put a bomb into the barracks of the American armory there. I don't remember how many were killed with that bomb. American soldiers, 86, and lots of
287.
287. Thank you. Why don't you do the rest of this? That would be good. And look, in the verse itself, through this and Hezbollah's great power, Assyria, puffed up and sour, drives through the heights to Galilee with armies vast and allies 3. We can guess who those were. And when she thinks her war complete, the chariots of fire they'll meet. That's the Merkava tanks. You go up to the Golan Heights today, still today. They don't take many tour groups up there, but I got to go. There's still all kinds of pits from artillery. There is barbed wire all rusty everywhere. And there are Syrian tanks still there, blown up. You can still see them today because they were met there in the time of Nixon by Israel's new Merkava tanks and absolutely destroyed them all. Now, this Merkava, that's a very spiritual word. Do you remember what it means? Chariots of fire. That's what they called their tanks. They'll meet to burn and smash beyond recount before the top of Yahweh's mount. Syria was headed down for Jerusalem to destroy that place. They didn't even get outside their own borders, and their borders were taken then and still in the hands of Israel today. Does Yahweh like this war? No. You can do well if you're peaceful. Gaza, the Palestinian government, Isaiah 14:29 through 32. Such as it is, will continue in civil dispute while volleying rockets. This is why they were closed off behind that wall. Philistia will raise a plea while hurling rockets from the sea. Oh, you become a fiery snake. I'll kill your root, and then I'll break your children with a famine take. So howl you at the gate and bawl behind the concrete Gaza wall. And on and on. I'm going to quit now. There's more of this, including the Zephaniah part. Oh, let me do that. You, O Gaza, you will choke. The northern wind is searing smoke. You who bite the feeding hand will gnaw the hand from off your land. Philistia, a man of clay, the potter must now smash away. Maybe we can finish this up next Thursday if you're interested in it. Let me show you my handsome face. Ah, yes.